I'm Megan.
I'm CJ.
And I'm Erica.
And this is the Her Podcast. Our guest today has personally had a profound impact on my life, you guys. I have had the opportunity to be personally coached by her and have had the pleasure of watching transformations happen as she coaches others. I am so excited to introduce you to Jaime Gordon. Jaime's a professionally trained transformational life coach who partners with individuals to clarify their vision, break through barriers, and achieve the longings of their hearts in life, relationship, and business. We talked to Jaime all about how to get unstuck in life, what being unstuck feels like, tools to help get yourself unstuck, the Enneagram system, and so much more. I'm so excited for you guys to hear all of the goodness in this episode. Let's get into it. She always looks great.
I love your setup. You look like you have this huge, like, it's so cute.
She's professional.
This is actually my husband's office, but we share the mic. So whenever I do a podcast, I come up here.
I love it.
Oh my gosh.
Work for him.
It's so picturesque. Like, he set that, like, is that a setup?
He's a photographer, isn't he?
No, but he was once upon a time.
Oh my gosh. Hi,
Hi,
cat.
kitty.
I thought that was a raccoon for a second.
Yeah. Yeah, I just have random raccoons in my
I was
home.
literally like, for a second, I was like, wait, no, it's a cat.
Can you imagine?
Well, you know.
Goodness.
Maybe they domesticate raccoons in Indiana. We don't know.
I mean, that's actually the business that we're in.
Yeah.
I wanted to
Raccoons.
you see this opportunity. You can get it on the ground level.
Ground level. Listen, if you're selling it, I'm buying
Hustling
it.
raccoons over here. I love it.
Hey, I'm so excited to talk to you today. Like, you are one of my favorite people in the whole world. I have learned so much from you. Like, before I even met you, I stalked you on Instagram and was like such a fangirl. I don't think I told you girls the story when I met Jaime at Susie's school.
Okay, I was just about to be like,
Yeah.
I'm
Okay,
bad
sorry.
with some friendships,
Backtrack.
and I was like, this is Susie's school, right?
Yes.
So I need, okay,
Jaime
good,
was one of my coaches at Susie's school. And somebody actually randomly took a photo. I don't remember which girl it was. Of like the group, but it was literally like the moment that I met Jaime, and my face is like,
I think I remember that one.
he's such a fan of your work and of you, and like now to be able to like call you somebody in my circle is just like next level for me. So
Unreal.
I love you, and I'm so excited you're on the podcast.
Yes, and
I
we're so
am so excited you guys are having me. I love this.
Yeah, it's so fun. So we kind of just want to start with tell people a little bit about you, what you do in your work.
yeah.
So I am a transformational coach, which is slightly different from just a life coach. I work with individuals. I work with groups. I have a couple courses, and I met you coaching an event, which I super love coaching in person, but mostly I'm coaching people from my office at home.
I love that. So your handle is obviously at the Unstuckologist, and your, can I call it this? Your claim to fame, like your trademark, your signature seems to be to get people unstuck. And so I'm like, how did you come up with that name? What does that mean for you? And yeah, then we can dive deeper from there.
Yeah. So I was basically the poster child for stuck for most of my life. Like, there couldn't be someone who was more stuck than me. I was in this really fun cycle of choosing things that were predictable. Like, I was like living to like not lose. And of course, when you do that, you try to like control all the circumstances outside of you, so you don't have to feel all these big feelings inside of you. And so you start to make your life smaller and smaller and smaller, which leads you feeling very stuck. And so when I started to learn how to get unstuck, right, I did therapy, I did coaching, I've done reading and research, and I realized that there's actually a lot of ways. There's not like one way, there's a lot of ways to get unstuck. And so that's where like my passion has been for the last 4 years since I started my business. And how I got the name was I think I was coming home from one of the Susie School events, and we were talking, everybody was talking about like their bio handles and all that sort of stuff. And there was just like this aha moment of like, oh, Unstuckologist. It just like dropped in.
I love that. I love when things just like happen and appear and you're like, it just popped into your head because it feels like it was meant to be when those moments happen, right?
Yeah. I mean, when people say like, what do you do? You're like, well, I help people get unstuck. And I don't have to say that. I could be like, Unstuckologist. People just resonate with like, oh yeah. Because everyone knows the feeling of stuck.
Yeah.
Like I still know the feeling of stuck.
Yeah.
It's learning the tools on how to actually navigate through the feeling of stuck.
So I'm curious, you referred to saying that you were the poster child for being stuck. Can you shed some more light into what that actually looked like for you? Did you feel that from like a child? Was that in your teens, your adulthood? Like what were some tangible things that were going on in your life?
Yeah, I don't know if I resonated with this idea of being like personally stuck as a child. I do feel like there was so much outside of my control that I felt stuck in that regard. But as I was in like college entering adulthood, there was just some choices to want to play it safe. Mm. And so like, I'll give you an example. When I was in college, my major was advertising. And one of the things we had to do was an internship. Well, I was scared to go do an internship and I was in scarcity about how much time and all that effort. I didn't see the possibilities. I'm like, I'm going to go and I don't really know anything. They don't really teach you in school. Like, I mean, granted, they probably were going to make me make copies and
get
coffee.
But
I was thinking like someone's going to be like, here, do an open heart surgery and I'm going to let somebody die. Like that's what it felt like in my system.
Yeah.
And so my husband at the time was my boyfriend. He was starting his photography business. And so I was like, sign up with our college and then I can do my internship through you. So essentially I made my own internship. So
oh my gosh, did he grade you fairly?
I think the statute of limitations over that. But I mean, I sent out some postcards for him and I filled out all of the faculty, like reports. Like I did it for him, for the school.
Oh my gosh.
You were like, Jamie's amazing. She's the most helpful person I've ever met.
I've learned is that you're very resourceful, actually.
She's super resourceful. That's interesting because as you were saying that, I'm like, that is something that I would have figured out a way how to do it just like that so I could stay feeling safe.
Yeah. Comfort.
Yeah.
Or at least the level of discomfort I was used to.
Right.
Right. Because I'm not comfortable actually operating from that fear and that avoidance and just sitting in the resistance and avoiding the thing that's actually going to make my life bigger, better, more fulfilling. But I was very used to like the discomfort that I was in, and taking on a new discomfort felt very threatening and I didn't know how to navigate it.
Mm-hmm. So
I grew up in a family that was like no change. Like my mom remodeled the kitchen and I kid you not, she redid the cabinets the exact same way. Like she had it stripped and then refinished it. And she had wallpaper from like the 70s. Well, somehow she had the foresight to buy double the amount because she literally stripped it all down and put the same one back up.
Wow.
When I say no change, I mean like no change.
No change.
Wow, so that's incredible.
My window of tolerance for change was this big.
Right.
Real tiny.
Wow, that's incredible. So because you've obviously felt stuck and then obviously you deal with people who feel stuck. So I'm curious, what are some of the emotions and feelings that tend to come up when people are feeling this way? So that maybe if some of our listeners are feeling, they're like, oh, I could identify with feeling that way. And then I'd love to transition into how you identified you were stuck and started that growth journey for yourself.
So I think that fear is a big one. We tend to get afraid of our own fear instead of being like, oh, this is actually okay. Like fear is normal human emotion. We're all going to have it. But I think the one that really keeps us stuck is shame. And sometimes the fear is sitting like on top of the shame, right? And maybe even on top of the fear, there's some anger or some like indifference. Like I don't even like the thing anymore. I don't really want to do the thing, right? We've probably all been there. We're in such like demand for ourselves to be perfect or to look good while we're doing it, that the desire for the thing that's going to bring us the new life, just disappears, melts out of your hands. I'm sorry. Can you ask me the second part of your question?
No, you're so good. I'm wondering, how did you identify then that you were feeling stuck? Like what was there a catalyst or a trigger or a moment, and then how you started growing from that? And I'm assuming, did someone help you or did you help yourself by going on a journey?
Yeah. So I think one thing is that it's not one moment. It's a lot of moments, and I continue to have the moment, because with each level of growth, there has to be like this. Generally, we only grow not because sometimes we're moved by what we want, but a lot of times we're moved by the discomfort of where we are. That's where I started my journey. Was I was in so much discomfort of anxiety and depression, and feeling so out of control, and feeling like I didn't have any like external control in my world. I'd figured out a way to make my life super like dependent, right? So I didn't have to make those decisions, but then also like wrestling with this feeling of like, I don't have actually any control. And so for me, it was, I'm in so much pain. Like I'm willing to do this scary thing called therapy. And therapy is great, but therapy is really slow. I don't know if you've experienced it. And it's a perfect place if you're in a place of like trauma and needing to go slow. And it helped me get my head above water. And then what I love about like the coaching model is they really teach you how to use tools so that you can kind of, what the therapist is doing with you is actually tools. They just don't tell you, okay, so this is what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. And this is how you can do it yourself. And so I think that's like where I started to go like, oh, there's actually ways to work through this. I'm not just victim to where I find myself right now.
And the timeline.
So like when I would say that I was in my 20s was like my anxiety depression journey.
Okay.
Like I would say towards the end of my 20s was particularly hard. You know, I would do like I'm so anxious I can't eat anything to I'm so depressed I'm getting gain 20 pounds yo-yo situation. And just settling for a life that was like okay and calling it good. Like I didn't know actually how unhappy or unfulfilled I was, because I was so like used to numbing out my emotions and distracting myself. So when I started the journey, it was really about like, I'm in crisis, I need help. And then as each time, like there's been like kind of like ebbs and flows of bigger pushes of movement. And those have been more, some because like, hey, this isn't working in my life. What else do I want and need? And sometimes it's been, what do I desire? Or what's the feedback coming at me from my life that is calling me into a new area of growth? Because we're constantly getting feedback of things that want to expand and grow and change and heal in us if we are willing to listen. Otherwise, we're just going to rinse and repeat, like opportunity after opportunity, slapping us in the face of like, hey, this is your feedback. Would you like to heal this? Would you like to work through this? And it's never like a once and done. It's always like an event and a process. Like, yes, I'm doing this. Like you take, some massive action, and it's a process because there's going to be moments of growth and recoiling back into your old way of thinking and doing and feeling, right? And then you're going to have so it's kind of like Nemo. When Nemo and his dad leave the sea anemone, right? And they go out and they come back in and then they go out.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
And then you would do a third time, right? That's what we do when we grow. And the more that we are in alignment, and what I mean by that is when we're in right relationship with all the parts of us, not just the part of us that wants to grow, but the part of us that is scared shitless. Like when we get all the parts of us on board, there's less resistance. And so what feels like used to be like, trying to run a marathon in cement shoes now feels like you've got lightning on your feet and you can run. So it's like sometimes the resistance is just like, oh, I need to actually not just push and hustle through this, but actually stop, listen, gain some understanding, gain some like perspective shift, forgive myself for the expectations I have here and the misunderstandings so that I can move forward.
Do you find that when people are ready for growth and they're ready to get unstuck, they have this different idea of what the process is going to look like? Because the idea of it is so like amazing. I'm going to grow, I'm going to learn, I'm going to expand. But the work of it is really down and dirty and hard. And the process may look a lot different than we realize.
Yes, because we can have growth that feels good. But generally speaking, it's kind of one of those situations where you get slapped in the face and then you like, oh, thanks for slapping me in the face. Like, it hurts so good.
The good pain.
the things that we don't know have all the possibilities. And when we learn something about ourselves that we have purposely chosen to not see, we've chosen to not see it on purpose because it's painful to see. So if we are operating from a place of thinking that, I remember thinking that I was the good one in my marriage. I'm the good one. I'm responsible. He's not. He's so selfish. He's blah, blah, blah. And when I could see that part of my journey was actually all of my journey is owning my side. And when I could actually see that this racket I had going was I'm the good one, was really my way of not being with things I needed to own for myself. And so like, as long as I'm the good one, then right. And I get something from that. I'm going to perpetuate that cycle between the two of us. And I'm going to show up and really that, is just the victim story of like, I'm the good one. I have to, right. It gives me a sense of belonging. It gives me a role. It gives me some equity in the relationship. And it ticks all the boxes of the ego, right? I'm looking good. I'm feeling good. I'm right. And I'm in control, right? It's just what we choose to be right and in control of. Usually we choose things that cause us suffering.
Wow.
What?
That's so true.
We're all just like processing in our minds.
The word what flew out of my mouth before it I just need you to explain that a little bit.
Yes.
I'm sorry. That was such a my brain was like
what?
this.
No, we're involved. We're like processing
I'm just
everything you're
literally
saying.
Okay,
Yes,
explain that to me. Explain that to me.
I can think of like a real example.
Yeah.
That would. I feel like sometimes we need like a tangible, like, what does this even look like? Because the confusion that comes up with that is because we have this, think of us like the Matrix, right? We have this illusion that we live under of what we think is right, what we think is good. And it's the Matrix, right? It's not real. It's an illusion. Like the truth is out there somewhere, but generally speaking, we're looking through so many biological filters that our brain has set up, looking to be right about stuff that we will completely miss information on the regular.
Yeah.
So like, I'm trying to think of what, so my husband back in the day had started a photography business and he was supposed to like edit weddings and then like get, fulfill all that stuff. And he would wait until it's like the couple is pissed. Right. And then I would take over, right? Okay. And I would do all of the work, right? On top of all the other stuff that I was doing, I would take over his stuff, right? And then I could like see like I'm responsible, right? If it wasn't for me, like your business would go under, like you're so lazy or why can't you blah, 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 right? I would have all these judgments that I got to be right in. And meanwhile, I'm like, hanging myself to the martyr cross, right?
Yes.
And the reality is that like I was choosing it. I was choosing it for a lot of really like selfish reasons because I got to look good. I got to have control over the situation because it got done the way I wanted to in the time frame that I wanted to, right? I got to rub his face in it. I got to look good in like I'm the one who like presented it. Here you go, couple, right? That is now no longer pissed, right? So and I'm enabling my husband because I didn't know it at the time, but I didn't see an option other than what I was doing but it was actually allowing me to not risk with him and to keep in enabling space. Yeah. Which it worked for us. I'll be over responsible for you. You can be under responsible. And so we just like fit like this little like horrible dance that we would do. Yeah. And the thing was like, I could make him the bad guy, even though I was up to that myself.
Yeah. But you couldn't see that because you were focused on, I'm fixing it. I'm the good one.
Yes. And I wouldn't even have thought like, oh, I'm the good one. Like it was like, I was in crisis mode of, oh, I got to fix it. There's no other options instead of saying like, well, what are you planning on doing about that?
Right.
And allowing like, well, I guess if you don't have a business, you don't have a business.
Yeah. Like instead of letting him fall on his feet or on his face and being like, okay, like you didn't get the photos to them. That's on you, dude. Like you're like, I'll make sure that the photos go. And he knows that now. So he doesn't have to do it.
Yeah. But then I got to avoid a lot of conflict with my husband.
Right. Yeah.
I got to make him happy. I got to manipulate him into a better mood because I relieved some stress from him. Like I was being very covert about what I was up to. But the thing is, that is a form of dishonesty that will always breed anxiety.
You're dropping a lot of stuff right now where I'm like, yeah, I've done that. Yeah, I've done that.
Well, who hasn't, first of all?
Yeah.
And it's not like I don't do it ever again. No, it's about noticing when I'm doing it.
Yeah.
Borrowing the hindsight. I call it borrowing the hindsight, like going into the future and asking myself, if I was creating a victim story right now, like what would I be upset about like afterwards? And then that'll tell me what I actually want and need.
So can you give an
so like
can you
if
give me
I
an example?
So let's just say that you are going on vacation, right? And you're going to be leaving the house and you're thinking like you're scrambling around, you're doing all this stuff, right? And you're like, okay, if I leave the house, what am I going to be like in the victim story about? Meaning like I'm going to be blaming or resenting something that happened. I could go like, oh, well, I could come home and no one will have fed or watered the dog, like, right? So like, I already know, right? Just by asking myself, what would I resent? What would I be upset about? Where would I be creating a victim story? Be like, oh, then I can, from that, I can go, well, what do I want and need? Oh, I need to ask my son to make sure that the dog has water and food. Or like, we're going to be leaving and you like, what would I resent? Oh, you know what? I'm always like waiting in the car for my husband. Actually, this is backwards for my husband. But like for him, right? Where he would have a victim story would be he's ready to leave at a certain time. And like my version of what time we need to leave is a different time from him. So like his victim story would be to wait till we're in the car, right? And then be pissed that we didn't leave 5 minutes earlier.
Right. Instead of communicating to you, hey.
Then he gets to be the good one.
Right.
Right. So then making the request like, hey, can we leave by this time? Or even a boundary. I'm going to be leaving at 10:30. If you want to ride with me, be in the car.
So I feel what's popping into my head as you're saying all this is almost like anticipating the annoyances. And it's like,
yeah, you're borrowing the wisdom from the future.
Yeah, you're like, I know this will bother me. So I need to do my job, which is like preemptively be like, hey, like it's going to annoy me, or like, can you please make sure this is done? But then I guess what happens if it doesn't get done? Like I think to myself all the time,
Look
like
at your smile,
like, but that's what I'm like, okay, so then how do you not still be the good one when you're like, okay, I've like taken Jamie's wisdom and I'm like, okay, I like know this is going to bug me. So I'm going to like preemptively be like, hey, yo, can you make sure this is happening when I get home? Because I'm going to be running really busy. And then you come home and it's not done. And now you're like, well, what the heck? Like I tried to communicate.
So yeah, like how do you shift your reaction?
Yeah.
Well, okay, so I think like it's normal if someone breaks a promise for them to be upset.
Okay.
But you also look at like, where did I this is the question. Ownership is the name of the game.
Okay.
So coming into, if I was going to own my contribution to the situation that I didn't like. So even if it's 2%, I'll own that 2% 100%. Mm-hmm. So like where I might have been unclear was, will you have this done by this time? And then did he say yes? Or did I just say, hey, empty the dishwasher, bye? That he didn't actually agree to anything.
Ooh.
If he didn't agree to do it, then I can just be like, oh, I'm upset because I want it done. What do I want and need? I'm going to go do it, or I'm going to make a request, or I'm going to outsource it. But if let's say they say, yeah, I will do that, and you come home and it's not done, it's
then it's
reasonable.
like gloves are off. Here we go.
I don't know if reaction ever gives us what we want.
Yeah.
I think there's like the neutral, like coming to neutrality, which isn't always easier. Let yourself have the emotion, like be angry, be frustrated. You can say, I'm angry, I'm frustrated. But where we get into like defensive communication that generally leads to more defensive communication, not connection, is when we move into blame instead of curiosity. So like if someone's like, you've been on your phone all day, or you're like, we're at dinner, you've been on your phone and I'm upset, right? Well, I can own my part of that is I didn't actually make a request to put the phone away, right? Now, let's just say I made the request, will you put your phone away? And they say yes. Or maybe you do the like thing ahead of time, like, oh, I'm going to ask at dinner, we're not going to have our phones. I've already I'm pre-doing that. And so they're breaking this promise by bringing their phone out. You can say, will you put your phone away? Like make a request, ask for the thing you actually want versus like trying to like roll up a newspaper and swatting them on the nose. Because think about the other way around. If you were doing the other thing, which way were they going to get more of what they want from you?
Right.
And then you can ask them a question like, I'm curious what brings you to be on your phone right now? What's happening for you? So like, because our focus, right, we have to be in a neutral space to be able to be open to the curiosity.
Yeah.
Because there might actually be something really interesting that I would want to know. Like, what is bringing that person to break their promise and be on the phone with me? Because generally what's happening is they're on their phone. I've made up a story that there is like, I must not be important enough to them for them to be off the phone. So I'm actually in shame. Yeah. And when I'm in shame, I want to blame. Like shame and blame are just like kissing cousins. So if you think like, oh, if I want to blame, I can come back into like, what am I making up about me? Is that true? Like, are they bored with me and that's why they're on their phone? Probably not, right? Would I want to know? Like, if I could know why they're on the phone, would I want to know? Yeah, I would want to know.
Hey friends, Megan here. Do you need to update your makeup toolkit? I sure do. Let me tell you about a beautiful new line of makeup brushes from KR Cosmetics. KR Cosmetics was created and designed by a professional and award-winning makeup artist, Kelsey Ray, with makeup artists, makeup lovers, and those new to makeup in mind. Designed with the highest quality synthetic brushes to bring you both luxury and affordability, these beautifully crafted brush sets also come with a brush guide to help take the guesswork out of your makeup routine. These cruelty-free and vegan brushes are quick drying, antibacterial, and have I mentioned the handles are a fun shade of bubblegum pink. Choose from the Essential Eye Brush Set, the Flawless Face Set, or the Deluxe 13-piece collection, which comes with a super cute matching pink faux leather cosmetic bag. I am also a huge fan of the Flawless Face Sponge, which I use for my foundation and concealer every day. Find your new fave beauty tools on Instagram at Kelsey Ray Cosmetics. That's KELSEYRAECOSMETICS. And head to krcosmetics.ca and use the code HER10 to save.
Well, and how do you shift yourself into neutrality, right? Because I think you said feel your emotions, and I'm like, perfect. We can all sit here and be like, I can feel my emotions. But I'm like, are there some tangible, is it like breath work? Is it like giving yourself this, what are things to help you?
Sometimes you need space.
Yeah.
So like when I'm in a confrontation or, opportunity with my husband, I will, and I can't see past what I'm blaming him for. I will say like, I need a break because I can't own anything right now. I'll be back in 20 minutes when I can own my side. And I'll make a request when we come back together, can we both just start with owning our part? Because remember, one person might be 98% at fault and the other person is 2% at fault. Like we both own our part 100%. So like if I forgot, my husband's birthday, I would own that because we don't forget anything, right? We subconsciously forget things on purpose. So I would apologize. I would ask for forgiveness for that. But then also where he might have to apologize, and that would be probably his reaction, his tone, or like waiting to see, like wanting to make me pay, right?
Right.
How we do that? Like, oh, I wonder if he'll even notice my new haircut.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and then by the time we go to bed at night, we're like fuming.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, and what we've been up to is we want to be right? We want to be, and we want to make them pay. Instead, we could be like, you know what? I didn't even ask you. Hey, do you notice I got my hair done? Would you compliment it? And like, we're making somebody else responsible for our own needs.
Yeah. And it all ties back to like asking for what you need.
Yeah. Well, and then aside from that, just knowing, discovering what we need.
Self-discovery. So that's what you're doing then, I imagine. Tell me, helping people self-discover and walk along that journey. Is that correct?
Yeah. I want you to think that when people come to me and they're stuck in a particular area of their life, whether that is they have a goal that they haven't been able to meet, or whether it's just emotionally they're stuck in some like lower, not fun emotions, the possibilities for something new lie outside of your awareness. Otherwise, you would already be there.
Okay.
Right. So we keep looking in what we just naturally occurs to us, right? We think like the next strategy is going to be the ticket. The reality is the strategy is the smallest part of transformation. Like awareness is a good chunk of it. And being willing to like look at it from different angles and like see that there's possibilities that we've never even considered. Those are generally the ones that move the needle. But we can't really get there unless we can see where we actually are, which is really hard. Like I thought my anxiety was just because I have anxiety. I didn't realize my anxiety was the symptom, right? The illness was living in so much like I was out of integrity with myself on the regular basis.
Okay.
Right? I wasn't treating the cause. I was trying to treat the symptom and wondering why the heck I wasn't getting any like results, or especially not long-term results. So think of it like a diet, right? We pick a diet. We think like this diet's going to be the thing. And then as soon as we go off the diet, you gain the weight back. Why? Because the strategy is the symptom. It's not the cause, like the being overweight. Like it's just like the outward expression of something internally happening for us. When we shift internally, the outward starts to happen from a place of like alignment. And I wouldn't even sometimes ease. There's often resistance that we have to walk through.
How do you help people walk through resistance? Because this is something that is like a huge theme for me right now. The word resistance, the feeling of resistance. And I'm just getting so curious about why I feel resistance in certain areas. But I'm also not quite sure how to move through it.
Yeah. So I do think that resisting your resistance is just like doubling down on resistance. You just add another layer.
Ooh,
so like,
right.
Because
That's huge.
So the sentence I love, which I got from Liz Hayes, is become comfortable with your discomfort. And so that's a really great thing that you can say in a moment where you notice whether your body, you feel the resistance in it, or just mentally, or maybe it's a combo where you notice like so much resistance and dread, which by the way, the definition of dread is impending doom. So when you dread something, you actually feel like doom is headed your way, right?
Yeah.
Does that not resonate like deep down in?
So hard.
So when you think that we often fear our own fear, we fear our discomfort, and that is just perpetuating the resistance. So first is just being like surrendering to where you are. Being like, I feel scared. It's okay that I feel scared. Discomfort is not a problem. Me being afraid is not a problem. Me feeling shame is not a problem. Me wanting to go back to bed is not a problem. Me wanting to fill every moment of the day with distractions is not it doesn't make me a problem. I'm choosing it for a reason. That's okay. Right? Like just meet yourself with some compassion.
Right.
Compassion is, so I want you to think that when you're in that big time resistance, you're most likely in a fight or flight situation.
Okay.
Right? And when we are in that fight or flight situation, there's a couple things that happen in our brain. Your prefrontal cortex, which is all the logic, like, we know here, but doesn't feel true here. Like our brain and our body, like we lose the ability to like attach logic, and the logic just doesn't make sense. So like if you picture, making a fist and like having your thumb tucked under your fingers, when you are in the fight or flight, like your prefrontal cortex, which would be your four fingers in the front, like flips up, and underneath here is your amygdala, and it's going crazy. And so, and this is, I forget what, this is not mine. This is a thing you can put up, flip your lid if you want a visual. What we need is compassion. When we do compassion, what happens is so we're usually on the left side of the brain. It activates the right side of the brain. So we get like bilateral stimulation. And what that's going to do is going to help bring that prefrontal cortex back online.
Okay.
That's good.
Yeah.
Which is why we're in an argument with our husband and we're like, and you're going circles and circles and you're basically like ding, 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 round 9, right? That's when we need to like walk away.
Yeah.
And come to a place where like our body starts to calm down, and then the logic starts to come in, right? Have you ever done that? Like you're in a theory thing, and like the next day you're like, you know what? I was kind of a jerk. Like, that wasn't actually that big of a deal what she said or what she did, or that, and I really overreacted. And an overreaction, by the way, is just me telling me I have work to do, right? There's something historical.
So it's a self-reflection.
She's so many good ones, you guys.
Not a reflection of the other person.
Yeah.
So that's like a sign to look inward.
It is literally, it's our like ego's way of not being with the stuff we don't want to see about ourselves. So in that space, like we can take a moment and bring ourselves compassion. And then I like to bring compassion into curiosity. So I'll ask myself a question like, what am I thinking that's bringing me to feel this way? Or, like, what am I making up about this? And then I ask myself if it's true. You'd be shocked at how many times we think something is true that's not actually true.
But giving yourself the space and the actual effort to think about that is something we don't often do because we're still so busy reacting.
Yeah. And our reaction just keeps us stuck exactly where we are, instead of like the reaction's just a window into more of us that we don't know. So it's like good news. When you hit that, it's like good news. Like, ooh, I'm going to learn something new.
Yeah. Like, I think I can hear our brains working right now.
I know. They're just like pumping on overdrive. It's so great. I'm loving the curiosity piece. Like, that's really standing out for me, as something that, I don't know. Yeah, it just keeps coming up from you and like from other people, that just leaning into that curiosity and trying to understand the other person's perspective, your own perspective of yourself. I think in this new year, I read something that was like, why don't we ask ourselves why more? Like, even internally in us, why am I doing this? Right? And you can do it of very simple things and of big things. And you start to gain insight of like, oh, I do this because of this and I actually don't want to do that. Or I do this because of this and I want to keep doing that, or I want to do more. And so I don't know if that plays into sort of what the way you think.
Absolutely. Asking yourself questions of like, why? I wonder. Well, if I'm making up that he said that because of this, I wonder if that's not true. If it's not true, what I want to know, how could I know that? Well, I guess I could ask him. Then it starts to peel back all of my biases, because maybe it is true. Cool. Then I know what I'm dealing with. What do we want and need? What boundary, like I am actually clearer to see what boundaries I need, versus when we're in self-protection of trying to prove our point right.
Yeah.
It brings out logic.
Yeah. It just helps you to actually look for more what is actually there versus what we make up is there.
So I'm curious, when somebody's finding themselves in reaction, what is the first question we can ask ourselves to help bring us out of reaction and into curiosity?
I'd say first I would just start with like identifying yourself like on a map, like the mall kiosk that says like you are here.
Yeah.
Right. And then there's like Wetzel pretzels over here. So we need to like, but this is where I want to be, right? That's over in responding, not reacting, but I'm over here like in react mart. I don't know. Right.
Love.
So I would ask myself like, okay, what am I like, what I notice how I'm feeling. Like I'm really upset. I allow myself to feel the emotion, right? Because there's part of me that feels very true to. And if I try to just like cut it off at the knees, I'm essentially gaslighting myself. There's going to be an element of like, well, screw you. I'm not going to tell you when I'm upset anymore. I don't care.
Yeah.
So you like allow yourself to feel the anger. And then I ask myself, okay, what am I thinking that's actually bringing me to feel this? Because generally those thoughts sometimes are subconscious and we just are angry and we haven't even identified why we're angry. You've ever noticed that when you're talking to someone, you're in a disagreement and it's not till like, I don't know, 20 minutes in that you realize why you're actually upset?
Yes.
Yeah.
So you do that work. Like you don't make them responsible for you knowing. You ask you.
That's big.
Right? Like, it's my upset.
What's my upset?
Like, it was mine to own. It's my upset.
Yeah.
And then I can ask myself, like, what am I thinking or feel like that makes me feel this way? Like, I get to grab hold of that thought. And the thought is going to be like a domino effect. And like, I call it like going down like the rabbit hole, where you think it's one, and then you keep going, no, it's not that, it's this, and you keep, and until you get to like the nugget of what you're actually upset about or what you're actually believing. And this works not just, I want you to think, we're talking about exchanges with other people, but I want you to think, because that's where our brain wants to go, is like, how is this useful for other people? But actually the same dynamic happens us with us. When we are in the, like, oh, I'm procrastinating, right? And then I notice that I'm like punishing myself by numbing, or punishing myself by, or I'm not talking kindly to myself, right? I can be like, okay, what am I thinking that's making me to feel so like lousy or bored or blah or whatever it is? And you can be like, oh, well, I'm thinking this. Like, I remember one time I was down in my basement storage unit, like our basement, like little like heater area. We've got all this like storage, right? And as per usual, we have this ebb and flow of where it's organized, and then we just start to like
chuck stuff.
breadcrumbs and like, oh, I'm not using that lamp, but it's cute, right? Oh, this tub doesn't have anything in it. I'll just stick it right. And before you know it, it's like an episode of Hoarders in this little storage unit. And I grew up in a very chaotic home. And so like the chaos, the physical chaos of that room was very like triggering for me.
Yeah.
Now, if I wasn't actually curious about like, hey, why are you being so short? Why are you barking orders? Why are you feeling just like the heat coming off your body and stress? And why have you walked into this room 12 times on different days and walked out? Right? So you can ask yourself, what is it that makes me feel this way? And you can start to identify these thoughts that you have. And what I like to do is like look for the rule in it. So like for me, one of those things was like, oh, I'm really stressed out because this is really stressful for me because I make up that things should be able to be done quickly. And it's not going to be a quick thing.
So is that the rule you're talking about, that things should be done quickly? Got it.
Yeah. So I try to identify these rules that another way you could rules, you could be like belief, right? That's actually triggering the thoughts. So I can go, okay, well, is it true that things need to be done quickly? No, it's not true. What else is true? Like, well, a lot of things, like some things can be done quickly. Some things take time. Sometimes things that take longer are really fulfilling and that's awesome, right? There was other possibilities and be like, okay. And then I'd be like, I still feel upset. Like, what am I making up? That this like mess, it needs to be done perfectly. Well, is that true? No, because there is no perfect. We're talking about Christmas ornaments and like kindergarten art things. Like, no, it's not perfect, right? That's not true, right? So throughout the entire process, there is a constant conversation when that I can be having with myself. Just like if you were like in a fight with your husband, how many things do you actually, is it like you take 2 sentences and you're done? No, sometimes, right? Like, can you not leave your cup there? Oh yeah, sure. No problem.
Right.
Done.
Right. But if it's like, hey, I got all sorts of things for you. And you just happen to have like the straw that broke the camel's back, sit down and grab a cup of coffee because we're going to be here a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So like in that, I could spend all my time hating and being miserable to be around, like while doing this project, or I can be in a conversation with myself where I start to forgive the misunderstandings of those rules that I had adopted a long time ago. And I adopted them for good reasons. As a child, it was very hurtful for the chaos to be there. So the desire for it to be perfect makes sense. There was discomfort with things taking a long time. My mom is very detail oriented and like, there's nothing that was done quickly in my childhood home, right? Everything has a 42-step process. So it makes sense that little Jaime thought like, I am not doing anything that takes long time.
Right.
That's going to be quick and dirty. And we're going to cut all the freaking corners. I'm not doing perfect either. So like they don't have to make sense. They can be conflicting rules. But when you start to identify them, you go like, oh, that's okay. I actually am not going to hold it against myself. I'm going to forgive myself for the misunderstanding that I needed to do this or that I could do this.
Wow.
And then I start to like some of the weight, the shoulders relax. Is it still hard? Do you still have emotions? Absolutely. But you're also kind of like getting you're taking layers of the resistance off. So you can actually experience what's true in that moment instead of what's true in the moment, plus all the stuff that you haven't discovered heaped on top.
Wow.
It's kind of like doing laundry for this week versus if you didn't do laundry for the last 10 years, like you would have a lot of laundry to do.
Yeah. I feel like I got a lot of laundry to do.
I don't because my mom did it.
Yeah.
It's just like laundry. It's just like laundry because it's never ever done.
Right.
Because even if you are like at the end of your thing, guess what? You keep experiencing things. And now at the end of the day, you already have a load of laundry.
So I'm curious on people who come to your seminars and do the work and are like, yeah, man, like I'm ready to own my rules or understand or explore or get curious. And then they go home to a spouse or a partner or into relation with someone else who isn't doing the work. Like, how does that affect the process?
Well, I want to say that it actually works for you.
Okay.
Because this is about owning you. And if they are poking you in those exact areas that you're trying to grow, it just is pushing, like it is an opportunity. So if let's just say that you are like, you know what, I'm going to be I'm going to start budgeting, right? It's a thing I've been like avoiding. It feels like so heavy and hard and scary, but my husband just keeps spending and spending and spending, right? I'm working on ownership and responsibility, and he's over there just doing whatever. Makes sense. You'd be frustrated and be like, well, it can't work because he won't, right? But then I get to come back into my ownership and responsibility and be like, well, what do I need? What is it for me? Am I still doing the things that I want and need? Like, am I willing to release the judgments I have against him so that I can have clear boundaries with him? It actually calls you more in, like, almost, yes, it's easier when two people are doing the same thing. Like, if you're going to eat healthy, it's a lot easier if you're like, we're doing Whole30 as a family. Lots easier than if you're like cooking two different meals. But don't you think that's like, you're not cooking two different meals, you're cooking your meal, and he's going to cook his own meal.
And something that I have learned personally in doing self-work is that it seems to have a trickle effect on those around you.
Yeah. Well, think of it like a recipe. And say you're making like peanut butter chocolate chip cookies. And for years, you've been bringing the peanut butter and your husband's been bringing the chocolate chips. If you stop bringing the peanut butter, now they're just chocolate chip cookies. It changed the recipe.
Yeah.
So you always have influence. You have more influence than you could possibly know, because in relationship, we teach people how to treat us. And when we start to like shift that, we change the relationship dynamics. Now, sometimes you don't necessarily fit anymore. That can happen. But oftentimes, if you're coming at it from a place that is clean and not like judgment on the other person, but staying in I call it staying in your own backyard, it actually becomes like there's a natural curiosity, and there seems to be like that trickle down effect. You don't have control over them, right? That's their yard. If they want the weeds to be 10 feet tall, they absolutely get to choose that. Like, there's no bad. That's their choice. Like, we get to choose ours.
How do you help people get to that spot where I imagine it's just a constant practice of, I can't control them, I can control my yard. What are some tips for being able to stay in your yard?
It's literally what I was going to ask. I was like, How do you focus on your own yard when the weeds are so high? And you're like, even in my peripherals, I'm like, look down.
Yeah. Well, sometimes because what we want to do is like create control and call it a boundary.
Ooh.
Like, we want to be able to, like, if they would clean, and we often want to do that because we're uncomfortable with their yard. Like, if they mow their lawn, then I won't have to look at their lawn, right? I don't want to look at their weeds. And so, I just think, like, picture, like, if your family, whoever it is, right? Like, you've got like neighboring yards with fences. We're like sitting on the fence with our hands on it, like staring into the neighbor's yard, looking at their weeds, and be like, oh, you should really put a garden box over there. And you know what? That tree needs to be trimmed, right? And think, like, as long as I'm doing that, like looking over the fence, guess what I don't have time to do?
Your own yard.
Your own work.
Yeah, I'm not noticing my own. So every single time that there is I notice where I'm seeing in their yard, and I want to be there, like, it's just a reminder for me to turn around and look at my yard.
Put the mirror
Now,
up.
that doesn't mean I don't have boundaries, right? Because sometimes maybe his dog keeps coming over and crapping in my yard. Right?
Yeah.
I can have a boundary. But often what happens, just our ego likes to see where they're doing it instead of seeing ourselves. So, like, here's a practical thing that is helpful. The two different things. One, visualizing it. You're in the middle of it and you're looking and you're like in judgment over your sister, your friend, your spouse, your coworker, and you're seeing what they're up to. And you're just like, it just like visualize that you're like two neighbors, and then just like picture, and maybe they're over here complaining about you, right? Just picture like turning their shoulders around so they face their yard, like imagine it, and then turn yourself around and look at your own yard. And that often is very like calming for me to just be like, okay, they're having their own reaction. They're having their own whatever. Like, okay, they're turning over into their yard. I'm turning around into my yard. What's in my yard? Okay, how am I feeling? What am I thinking? Is that true? What do I need? And that like brings me back into my own yard. And then that when I'm in my own yard and I'm taking care of myself, the boundaries or the requests that I'll make are going to be more resourceful.
And from a calmer place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Versus like shame, blame, control, and call it a boundary.
Yeah.
Or and then the second thing is allowing for their upset to be okay. like letting them have their own mess and be like, this is their mess. This is what they want. This is what they're choosing. This is their best choice, because we know that every single decision that we make is because our brain, usually subconscious part of our brain, says this is the best choice available based on how things are occurring to us in the moment. So when someone is perpetually late, it's because it occurs to them that that's the best choice available.
Furnishing your home or space can be a big investment, but what if I told you guys it doesn't have to be? If you're looking to furnish or refresh your space, but you aren't ready to invest a lot of money up front, then you need to hear about Pivot. We just upgraded our podcast studio with Pivot, and we're loving the new furniture. If you guys haven't gone and checked out our new setup yet with our pink chairs, you're going to want to do that. Pivot is a Canadian company helping people by making home furnishings more convenient, accessible, and less wasteful. They offer a variety of beautiful furniture options in multiple colors and finishes, designed with quality materials that last. So it's affordable for everyone and easy on the environment. Plus, it's stain resistant, making it kid and pet friendly too. You need to check out the Pivot subscription option, perfect for anyone who likes flexibility, convenience, and low prices. Get low monthly pricing and the flexibility to keep your space fresh as your life and style change. Choose furniture, then sit back and relax while Pivot handles the delivery and the assembly for free. Refresh your space whenever you like with the furniture swaps, and payments decrease by 20% each year. So the longer you subscribe, the lower your payments get. Pivot offers furniture that can adapt to life's changes with flexibility, affordability, and sustainability at the forefront. Find them on Instagram at Pivot Subscriptions. That's PIVOT Subscriptions. And view all of the premium furniture options at pivotfurniture.com. You'll find the link in the show notes.
And we have to stand back and be okay with that.
No, you don't have to be okay with it.
Okay.
But spending time trying to like get them to do anything is pointless. You have zero control. So what we do is, and then we're like in a victim seat about it versus us turning around and be like, what's in my yard? Well, what's in my yard is I keep showing up to lunch with this girl and she shows up or she cancels on me and she's 30 minutes late and then she, whatever, right? What's in my yard? Oh, well, I haven't actually told her how this affects that I don't like that she's late. What else was in my yard? I keep making plans with her, even though the same thing happens over and over again. What else is in my yard? I don't actually like let her know that I'm pissed when I'm dishonest with her. I like basically lie to her face and pretend like it's okay. Wow. And then I go tell a friend. That's in my yard. See how much stuff is in my yard?
Wow.
So if I take care of my yard and then I'd be like, well, what boundary? What do I want and need then? Well, I might actually need to say like, hey, Sally, because so many people are named Sally these days. I'd love to meet you for lunch on Tuesday. What time will work for you? What time will work for you? Or let's meet at noon, just so you know. Like, or you could say like, I notice. I would actually ask for permission. Can I give you some feedback?
Yeah.
I experience you as always being late to like when we go to coffee. So would you be willing to show up on time this time? See, like I haven't made a request. I haven't been specific, right? And I'm pissed at her because she's breaking this promise that she didn't actually agree to.
Ooh, that's very common.
And then there's like a boundary. Like if you can't get here by this time, like I'm going to just go ahead and I'm going to be ordering, or I'll leave, or we just won't do lunch things anymore. We'll just see each other at the gym. That's okay.
I love the visual.
That's where we have power. So it's not like to let them off the hook. It's actually to put ourselves on the hook. We have control there.
Right.
We are empowered there. We actually have more influence over the results that we get in life than we are aware of.
It's a lot of like just taking responsibility, right, for your own actions.
Yes.
And I mean, I don't know what other people are feeling, but sometimes, and again, maybe this is me looking over the fence, but I'm like, no one else around here is taking responsibility, right? And so...
Okay, so try this little fun experiment.
Okay.
Nobody else is taking responsibility. Now just pretend like, and you're like looking out, right? Just pretend like a mirror just like slid right in front of your face and say the same thing. Yeah. And you're looking at your response. Yeah. You're looking at you.
Yeah.
Does that feel true?
No.
Like, can you see where you're not taking responsibility?
Yes.
So and so the thing is, like, you have control over you. You don't have control over them.
Yeah.
If that's true, nobody else is taking responsibility. Do you have control to make them start taking responsibility? You just have, but you do have 100% control over you. So it's like, you don't have to be in relation. That's the cool part. It's like, part of it could be, gosh, I notice where I surround myself with people who don't show up for me. Ooh. I wonder why.
Ooh.
I wonder why I choose that. What do I get from that? What need is that filling? Oh, well, I get this and this and this out of that. Can I fill the need in another way that doesn't hurt me?
Wow.
It's like we like we could like, oh, where else is it? Where else is it? You can ask yourself that. Like, this is happening here. Where else is it? And then all of a sudden, you discover you're the common denominator. Mm-hmm. And think about how beneficial it could be if, as the common denominator, you looked at yourself and go, what is it that I contribute that keeps bringing me that same thing over and over again? I wonder why. Well, and not in a place like I suck, but actually like curiosity with a lot of like grace and compassion, knowing that it's coming from a part of you that's trying to love you. Mm-hmm. Just picked a crappy strategy.
And I feel like there's got to be, like, if we were to start looking more so into our own lives, themes, right? That are quite common, especially in the beginning when you start doing your own work, right? And you can see it probably show up in multitude of areas.
It's kind of, so like what I do with my clients is we pick a vision, something to work towards. Because if you don't pick an aim, you end up with a default, right? Like, because think about it. If you don't pick a target to work towards, you're just choosing the same. Like you're actually, and your brain wants to solve a problem. And so if you don't pick one that you want, you're going to pick to ruminate on the things that aren't working in your life currently. Oof. So we pick a vision. So we work towards this vision, and anything that comes up between the resistance, the losses, whatever you want to, they're just exposing what wants to be transformed, new levels of awareness. So there's not like a right or wrong. You will never, ever end. Like, it is about like picking the future you want and then going after it. And in that, you're going to learn where you are actually blind to your impact, blind to what you're up to in a good way. Like, yes, generally it doesn't feel good to discover that you've been, like, I remember when I had this aha moment of that I was being manipulative with my husband, and it had never occurred to me that I was manipulative. And then I was like, okay, where else do I manipulate? That hurts.
Yeah.
So when you pick this vision, anything that comes up, you're going to discover that it's not just in the area that you thought you were going to transform, but that system is operating everywhere. I like to say, like, you can't pee in part of the pool. Like, it goes everywhere. So you are like, let's just say that you are like working on honesty, and you notice that you've been like, you're dishonest when it comes to whatever with your boss. If you are in like, and there's like that, and not necessarily like honesty we think of like as lying, but honesty goes much deeper than like a actual lie. So then you go like, oh, where else am I dishonest? And you'll get so much feedback. So as soon as you like pick that target, you're going to discover like, I'm like consistency. I was working on consistency, and I had a bunch of like results that I wanted and what I was going to do. And it was all about, I'm consistent. And guess what? You're going to discover real fast
where you're inconsistent.
How many areas you are inconsistent that you had no idea that you were paying a price for. Because as soon as you start to develop consistency in one area, you'll start to notice where you start to show up more consistently in other areas. And you start to like, think of it like, like sowing seeds and reaping a harvest. You're just like, oh, wow. I thought consistency was just going to be about working out and doing these work things. But in reality, it was also this and this and this. And I was hitting the snooze button and it was right. And it feels like the scales fall off of your eyes when you pick a target of this is where we're going. Because you're like, it's like a North Star. You like, every time you check the compass, you're like, oh, I'm off. I'm not actually facing the North Star. Like, I get it. Like, the feedback feels, hurts so good situation. Like, there's always a part of my vision where I'm like, I hate my vision.
Yeah.
Why did I pick that?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't feel good to see that we're not like perfect, shiny, glowing angels.
Totally. So I'm curious, because you are a person who helps and guides so many people. What are the things that you do to support yourself in your continued growth?
Working, like I always have like some sort of like, I would say like mentor, guide, or like thing that I'm involved in.
Mm-hmm.
So like whether that's an actual like coach, or I also have a network of like girlfriends that are all coaches, and we've all like, so like we can use each other, and we'll ask for feedback and be like, hey, and it's very much like coming from a place of like staying on my side of the street of what's happening, and like, and having someone that can ask you questions that actually puts it back in your own yard, and also sees what you, like usually will see and hear something that you are just can't see yet.
Yeah.
So I think there's all that. And then I think there's like the resource of that inquiry, that self-inquiry of asking yourself questions. I think one of the most resourceful ways is carving out time for it, like journaling.
Mm-hmm.
And there will be seasons where I'm very consistent with journaling, and there will be seasons where there is more resistance around it, or like having a morning routine. Like, and I think for me, having a physical outlet also, like moving my body, is very, very important, just in terms of being able to locate some emotions that are harder for me to just feel regularly. So like I'm an Enneagram 9, and we're in the anger triad, but repress the anger.
Yeah.
And so for me, like checking in and being like, asking myself, where am I angry? Not am I angry, but where am I angry? So that I can access it. But I'll use like a physical workout to be able to like feel the physical sensation of what anger generally feels like for me. And then there's like this little connection. I'm able to like be with it and like release it.
That's so interesting.
So for our listeners that maybe have or haven't heard of the Enneagram, can you explain just a little bit about what it is and the tool and how it can be used? And then we can go from there.
So the Enneagram is a personality model. So you think personality models, there's like the DISC assessment, and there's Myers-Briggs, Strengths Finders. And the Enneagram is a personality model. It's not gospel. It's just like a great explanation of personality types. The premise is that there are 9 basic personality types. There's actually more, but that's like once you get deep dive in there, the 9 personality types, and they're all produced from a fear and a desire. So generally speaking, there was, as a child, a repeated message, not necessarily like taught or spoken over you, but what you absorbed, or that it could have been very explicit. And there was a part of you that you thought like, well, this part of me isn't lovable, or this hurts to feel this way or want these things, or gosh, I get attention when I'm this way and not that way. And so you start to first consciously start to push parts of you away, and kind of like take on this like persona, which is your personality, to find like a sense of identity, to make sense of the world, to get your needs met, and to like avoid the things that you fear the most. So it's you get one number, all of the numbers, you get one number that is the primary thing. It's based on like what motivates you, and what motivates you is to get the thing you want and to avoid the thing that you don't want. It's really, really helpful because it shows you not just your strengths, it also shows your weaknesses. It shows you what things you might be up to when you get really stressed. It might show you things that you excel at when you are in a really healthy place, and you can fluctuate throughout the day. So it really is I think probably the best personality model, in that it shows you your weaknesses, which is going to give you a cheat sheet for self-awareness, because we're generally blind to our own impact and our own blind spots. That's just the way our ego is. It likes to hide all of our villain and pretend like we're all hero. And the Enneagram actually goes, okay, but here is your villain. And it when you read about it, generally your number will make you feel a little bit gross.
That's what I was going to say. When I started doing the test and like going through it with some people, there was like one that stood out, and I was like, no, like I will not be labeled those things. Like I do not want, so much resistance. You're like, I don't want to be known for that. Right. And
yes. I think the rule breaker is the 7 generally likes their number.
Oh yeah, I know so many 7s. I feel like Susie's school was filled with 7s. They're like, I'm a 7. So I'm a 2.
And I'm a 1.
And she's a 1 wing 2, and I'm a 2 wing 3. So can you explain and Erica doesn't know what hers is.
Yeah.
But can you explain what the wing means? Because that to me, I was like, what the heck?
Yes. Okay. So you have in the Enneagram, there's like an actual diagram. And on the diagram, so it's like a circle And it starts at 9 at the very top, and then it goes all the way around, ending with 8. So the number next to your number. So if you read the description, if you can test if you want, but they're like 65% inaccurate, just FYI. The number right next to your number. So if you are a 2, your choices are 1 and 3 for wings. So I want you to think that you have your primary driver, and then the one right next to you on either side, think of it like a bird, the wings are attached. Some people take a test and they go, oh, I'm a 2 wing 7. No, you're not. The wings have to be adjacent. Some people developed a very strong wing. Some hardly use their wings. So think of it like your number is your meal, and the condiments are your wings. It flavors your number.
Okay.
So if you are, so like a 2 wing 1 is going to be a little bit, will be like more detail oriented. A 2 wing 3 is going to be a little bit more like driven for success. Both will be very hardworking, right? You usually develop one in childhood pretty well, and as an adult, you can really lean into the other wing and try to develop the character traits of that other number, and that will give you a more balanced personality. The goal is for you to be able to like utilize all the strengths of all of the numbers. Yeah. But we think that it's like, it's just really helpful, because I know for me, childhood messaging of each number generally is one of those things that's getting in the like coming up for me when I'm meeting resistance. Mm-hmm. And so I like to check in with that. So like for a 9, it's not okay to assert yourself, or you're not very important. And so when I am moving towards something that requires that I assert myself, or shows up like, hey, this kind of makes me important, there's generally a lot of like maladaptive self-love. That's what I like to call self-sabotage.
It's a prettier term.
Yeah. To make sure that I don't actually shift who I think I am. If I think I'm somebody that it is not assertive, anytime I try to assert myself, my identity wants to pull me back. Right. So a lot of the transformation I work with is actually shifting identity, not just shifting behavior, because that'll be short term at best.
Right.
So for like the 2, right? The 2, like there is that messaging, like it's not okay to have needs, and I must be like a burden to love. Like I'm a lot.
Yep.
Right. Maybe I'm too much. And so you'll notice that when you start to like the stuff that's in your backyard will often have like that messaging in the things that you feel the most discomfort, or like where you're in some stuff that's not working for you. I mean, it's working for you, but not in the way that you want.
Yeah.
Go like, oh, where am I believing that I'm like too much, or I'm a burden? I see where I have been mind reading this person and showing up and giving 99% of all the effort in that relationship. Oh, because it evens out the equation. If I'm not too much to love, if I supply all their needs, now I'm indispensable. No one's leaving me.
Yeah.
Right. So like, it's really helpful when you can get a hold of that like childhood message and go like, how is that playing a role today?
I feel like you hit us with some really great knowledge today. And like, I know my brain is kind of going like this. So I'm sorry if at moments you were like, is that girl here? I was like, my brain's like way over here.
When Erica's quiet, she's really thinking about like all the things.
And so, so I just want to thank you for coming on. And I'm wondering, we like to wrap up with a fun little question, which is, can you please provide us with the best advice you've ever been given?
The best advice I've ever
I mean, that's given. A tall order, I understand. So if it's like recent, you read it, like, right, you mean whatever pops into your head is fine.
Yeah. I think the questioning what's true, like that has been really so game changing for me.
Yeah.
Because especially like moving out of like a, long-term relationship with anxiety, being able to like really break up with it, I'm a human, so I experience anxiety, but in terms of like, I don't identify myself as an anxious person anymore. It was really one of the hugest things was being able to go like, okay, I'm worried about this. Is that true? What else could be true? Like, and I make myself come up with other options. And like, just by doing that, like it just opened up so much for me to be able to release like, oh, I'm really worried about taxes. and I'm feeling so much anxiety about like preparing my taxes. Well, okay, why? Well, because if I do them wrong, I'm going to go to jail, right?
That's me.
Yeah. I'm going to do them wrong, and then I'm going to be like poor for the rest of my life, and then we'll have to live with my parents, right? Like, would go. And as soon as you get like, okay, is that true? What else could be true? Well, okay, well, I could do them right. What else could be true? Well, I could do them wrong, but be able to fix it.
Yeah.
What could else be true? Like, I could do that, and we do owe a lot of money and we would work through it. Yeah. What else could be true? And I just questioning what is true. Like, even like, oh, well, they said this because of this. Well, is that true?
Yeah, that's so huge.
You're going to fail at this thing, or nobody's going to come, or is that true?
Yeah.
I don't know. It's in the future. So obviously it's untrue right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even just that thought.
Yeah, that's so good. I really appreciate you coming on. Obviously, we've heard a bit about you from Megan, and she always speaks so highly, and this did not disappoint. I'm really excited to hear from our listeners what they think about this episode. And this one over here on the far with the couch, I'm very interested to hear because I know she was so excited to chat with you today specifically.
It was great.
Thank you. I'm wondering if you can tell our listeners where they can find you so they can follow along and like learn more about what you're doing.
Yeah. Well, first, thank you guys for having me. This is so much fun.
Oh,
it's so fun. 3 of you on a couch. Second, you can find me on Instagram at Unstuckologist, or my website is JamieGordonLifeCoaching.com.
Amazing.
Well, thank you so much, Jaime.
Thank you so much for coming on. I'm so excited for everybody to hear this episode.
Thank you, Jaime.
Bye.
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 Thank you, everyone, for joining us on this episode of the Her Podcast. If you want to follow along with us, you can find us on Instagram and TikTok at its.her.podcast. We can't wait to see you there.
Bye.
Bye.
Adios.